Hi everyone. Unfortunately, as is typical, I've got a really nasty cold today, which is a real shame. Some of you at the back might not be able to hear me. If you do have trouble hearing me, just give me a shout and get me to stop and I'll speak up. But yeah, Rachel invited me along today to talk about the work of the Cornwall Wildlife Trust. I've been working with the Wildlife Trust now for about 3.5 years, and yeah, prior to that I worked at the aquarium at Newquay, Blue Reef Aquarium. One of my favourite things in life is rock pooling, and I grew up in Falmouth, and right from an early age I've been really interested in marine life. When I was sort of about your age, a bit younger than you guys, and trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life, my parents really wanted me to go off and do something boring like be a doctor or a dentist or something like that, and I sort of kicked against it a little bit. I was a bit rebellious as a teenager, you know. I was really interested in art, so I used to do a lot of paintings and stuff like that and sculpture, and I wanted to go to art college, but my dad just wouldn't let me, so I started looking at more sciencey sort of subjects, and actually ended up deciding I really wanted to study marine biology. Spoke to a few grown-ups about that. This is back in the sort of 90s, and people that knew about it were all saying, no, don't do that, there's no work whatsoever, you'll find it really hard to make it as a marine biologist, and they all tried their hardest to put me off, but obviously you don't really listen to grown-ups, do you, when you're that age. So I carried on, and I went away to Liverpool University and got a degree in marine biology. When I came back to Cornwall after that, I was working as a sailing instructor for the summer. I'd been brought up in boats and stuff, sailing and stuff like that, so that's just something I was doing during the summer. At the end of that season, I was obviously looking a bit depressed as I was walking back up from the harbour, and one of the fishermen down there at Milas asked me what I was doing and if I was out of a job, and I said yep. So I actually worked on a fishing boat for about 6 months, and during that time I found out that I got really bad sea legs. I was out off the lizard, chucking my guts up for hours, hours on end. And so I ended up, I did netting for a bit, and yeah, that was pretty hideous. Ended up working on the oyster boats, so dredging for oysters using traditional sailing boats. It was a really amazing experience, and it sort of opened my eyes to the fishing industry. And actually, although at the time it didn't seem like I was working towards a career in marine biology, it's probably the best thing I could have done. There's so many people graduate with a marine biology degree who never get that experience. You know, it's very, very easy for us to sort of look at the fishing industry critically, but actually to have done it gave me, not only did it show that I'm not afraid of a bit of hard work, but it gave me a lot of insight into that industry. So yeah, after that, whilst I was doing that, I was sending my CV out to lots of places, and I ended up working at Weymouth Sea Life Centre and developing a career in public aquaria. I remember meeting my careers advice officer, and when I was at uni, I was in my final year. I'd just done my projects, and we all thought we were going to easily walk into sort of a science job. And the careers advice officer said, well, basically, there's no work in marine biology, so would you be interested in joining the army, or working in insurance, or perhaps being a teacher? And all of those, I was just like, no. And I'm glad I stuck at it. Nearly everyone who graduated with me that year has gone to have better paid work, but none of them do marine biology. I managed to do it, and I'm still doing it 20 years later. I think the most sort of important bit of advice to give guys of your age is that if you're really passionate about this subject, just keep sticking at it, get a load of good experience behind you, and don't be afraid to take sort of quite random opportunities. Quite a lot of the jobs, I've done a lot of other random jobs as well as those. But quite often you'll be doing a job, you might think it's not getting you anywhere, but you might be picking up really useful skills. Maybe they're skills such as working with people, or even sort of talking to people. Just a customer service sort of role is really important. A lot of scientists aren't any good at that, so you've got to bear that in mind as you're going through that. Anyway, I'm going to get on to telling you a bit about what I do now at the Wildlife Trust. So I'm the marine awareness guy at the Wildlife Trust. I'm not really a scientist as such. I've spent years working in public aquariums though, working with people, trying to tell people why they should look after the oceans. And my role is still pretty much that, it's marine awareness officer. And I've done a lot of work with volunteers as well, so we used to have lots of groups of volunteers coming to the aquarium. And much of what I'm doing now, again, is working with people. It's working with volunteers and getting people to do, to spread the word and do our job for us. And you'll find out later about a lot of the projects we do. They wouldn't operate without brilliant work of volunteers. So, Cornwall Wildlife Trust. Anyway, the Cornwall Wildlife Trust. So, what are the wildlife trusts? There are 47 wildlife trusts across the UK, and they're all separate, independent, local conservation charities. It's quite different to a big national organisation, like the RSPB or the Marine Conservation Society. Those are big national organisations. They're very different to wildlife trusts, which are all small and local. And but if you actually look at us as a whole, we've got a massive sort of political clout. And we do have the Royal Society of Wildlife Trusts, who are kind of like our head office, but they don't control what they do. They just help us sort of coordinate what we do. And we are still independent organisations. So that's what we've got across the UK, more than 800,000 members. But in Cornwall, we've got about 15,000 members. We've still got a large number, and we call ourselves Cornwall's leading local wildlife charity because we are so locally focused. And what we do is we protect Cornwall's wildlife and wild places, and we've now got 57 nature reserves across Cornwall. Many of them people don't even know about. Some of them are very sort of small and hard to find. Some of them we shout about because we think they're suitable sites for people to visit and learn about wildlife, but some of them we don't because they've got such sensitive habitats. So what we do is we raise awareness, we run conservation projects, we look after nature reserves and manage those. We also keep records. We've got a records centre which collects information from all across Cornwall, and that information is then available to scientists and people doing studies. Very important role. And then we also have a commercial arm, an environmental consultancy as well, which generates income, which helps the Wildlife Trust achieve what they want to achieve. So it's a very different sort of structure to what I was used to when I worked at the aquarium. For most of the time I was there at the aquarium, we had a boss, one guy who owned the business. And if I had an idea, I could ring him up or email him, and hopefully he'd say yes and give me the money. It's a bit different in the Wildlife Trust. A trust is actually managed by a council of trustees, and these guys are volunteers. So there's about 30 trustees at the Cornwall Wildlife Trust. They're all very experienced, very knowledgeable people, all very passionate about conservation. They give up their time to be members of the trust, and it is a serious sort of commitment. Now, I suppose just because of the nature of that, a lot of those people are sort of a bit older, some of them retired, so people sort of my age, obviously very few of us have got enough time to be a trustee, so it's quite a lot of older people. So in effect now, I don't have one boss, I have 30, so it's quite different. Those trustees sit on lots of different groups, so they have a strategy committee, and then they have a marketing and fundraising committee, and a conservation committee. So all of the decisions made by the Wildlife Trust have to be all approved by this big group of trustees. So the staff can't come up with their own idea and just do it. It has to be within the strategy of the trust. And that's how it works. So in terms of actually people employed by the Wildlife Trust, we have a chief executive, a guy called Trevor Edwards, and then we have a finance team. We have 3 people in there, an IT team. We've got 2 members of staff there. Marketing and fundraising, we've got I think about 6 members of staff, plus a team of fundraising staff who actually go out to events and talking to people, recruiting new members. And then we've got 2 people in our design department as well who do a terrific job. And then below that, the next sort of level is our conservation teams. So our conservation department has 2 real sort of strands. It has the marine, the living seas department, and the living landscapes department. And the numbers of staff in those teams varies. So in the living seas team, at the moment we've got 2.5 people. So you might think that's not many. Well, it isn't, considering how much we do, but we have two full-timers, one part-time working in the Living Seas department. And in the living landscapes, they've got a few more at the moment because they've just had a project come in that's meant their numbers have expanded, but normally there's about the same now, about 2 people. And then we've got a conservation manager as well. The reserves, we've got about 8 staff, and our record centre, we've got about 4 staff. So overall, I think employed is about 40 people at the Wildlife Trust. We're based just outside Truro, in a little village called Alec. Okay, so how do we get funded? Well, we bring money in from lots of different places. So I suppose one of the most sort of steady amounts of money is from our membership. So 15,000 members, that brings in quite a good amount of income. It's actually not very expensive to become a member of Cornwall Wildlife Trust. It's only about £2 a month. So it doesn't break the bank. So I think it's about 30 quid a year to be a member. But yeah, that brings in a lump of our money. We also get donations from people and legacies. So that's people leaving us money when they die, generally. We've had quite a few properties, quite a few nature reserves have actually been donated to the Wildlife Trust by people after they've died, including the offices we're in now at Alec. That was a house that was just left to us in someone's will, which is really great. And then we have projects. So when we want to set up a project to achieve one of our sort of strategic goals, we'll look around for sources of funding. Now, often that funding used to come from the government, but in recent years, government funding on conservation has really been sort of cut back. So now it's a very small percentage of our funding comes direct from government. We've been successful in getting European funding for some of our projects, and we also look at lots of other sources, say Heritage Lottery Fund, Big Lottery Fund, Esme Fairburn Foundation. All of these are large sort of grant-giving bodies that distribute money toward this sort of work. It's becoming harder and harder and more competitive though to bring in grants. And one thing that we have to do when we bring in grant funding is we have to bring in enough money, not only to pay for the staff who are going to run that project and to pay for the cost of that project, but also we have to bring in some funds to cover the overheads for those people. So that's why there's an arrow going back into the middle, because obviously to run the offices and the facilities that we need cost money. So yeah, so that's where the money comes from. So did anyone here think that we were just funded by the government? No. I think some people do think that, but we're not. We get it money from the public really in large amount. Okay, so the Living Seas team, which is the team that I work for, this is our vision. We would like to see wildlife in our seas thriving, recovering, adapting, and we want people to care about it. A lot of people just think that the UK seas are really dull and grey and cold and lifeless. But you guys know that's not the truth. But actually the general population are incredibly ignorant to how important our marine life is. And we want people to care. Because until that happens, then we're not going to see governments really helping. So how do we do it? Well, we run lots of awareness raising projects, and we campaign for better protection, and we collect lots of information that's really useful in arguing our case. So the sea is important to people, isn't it? And I'm sure it's important to everyone in this room. And there's so many sort of leisure activities that you can do in the sea, and all of these things are, well, I'm quite into nearly all of these things, to be honest. But the sea gives us a lot more than just that, and a lot of people sort of forget. But the oxygen we breathe, the majority of it comes from the sea. You know, our climate is regulated by the oceans and the sea, and we also get resources from the sea. So it is really, really important, and we need to look after it. But even more importantly than that, it provides a habitat for lots and lots of amazing wildlife. People don't realise, if you talk to people about UK wildlife and ask them to name some species, they'll normally say things like fox, badger, birds, they'll probably say hedgehogs. But actually, crabs, fish, mollusks, starfish, all these marine animals are just as important, and they make up more than half of our wildlife. But I don't think people realise that. And we've got some incredible habitats around Cornish waters. So you've got beautiful kelp forests. You can snorkel through them just here in Falmouth. I'm sure some of you have already. But they're amazing. They're just like a forest on land. These are highly diverse and beautiful. And then we have rocky reefs just covered in life. This is out off the Manacles, so again not far from here. Teeming with life and wonderful, colourful creatures. A lot of people don't appreciate we have them. And we've got meadows of eelgrass. That's a photograph was taken down at Durgan, so only a stone's throw really from here. And then we have soft sandy areas, and you look at those and you don't sort of, the untrained eye wouldn't necessarily think that was a hotspot for diversity, but it is. There's so many organisms living in soft sandy sediments and lots of life there. We've also got merle beds. You guys all heard of merle beds? Mm-hmm. So in the Fal estuary, we've got large areas of merle. Merle beds are made up by these sort of little twiglet sort of shaped pieces of coralline algae, which grow incredibly slowly. They take calcium from the water around them to grow, and they form a really complex structure on the seabed with lots of little hiding places for juvenile and small animals. And they're very rare in the UK. We've only got the ones in Falmouth are some of the best examples in the UK. There's some off Scotland as well, but we're incredibly lucky to have those habitats here, and they really need to be protected. We've also got wrecks covered in life, lots of wrecks around Cornwall, and we've also got an incredibly productive intertidal zone. So on a rare day when the tide drops really low, you can even see the kelp zone, but I'm sure you guys know just how rich in life our shores are when you go out rock pooling. I know you've been doing some surveys yourselves out on shore, finding creatures and things. And it really is teeming with life down there. We've got some rare species too in Cornwall, things like the seahorse. They turn up every now and again. If any of you ever are lucky enough to find one, please report it to Cornwall Wildlife Trust on our website. We really need to know this sort of information because these are so rare and threatened. The photograph there in the middle is taken by a friend of mine who last summer was pulling up a crab pot off Newquay and out popped a seahorse. And he rang me, which is great because fishermen don't generally speak to conservationists. But he rang me and said, "Matt, what shall I do?" So I asked him to take a photo and then put it straight back, which is what he did. But yeah, it's amazing. You guys might see one of these. Very rare. And we've also got things like sea fans. They're actually, some of you diving, have you ever seen a sea fan? Beautiful soft corals with this lovely sort of fan-shaped structure. Well, around Cornwall they're quite abundant, but elsewhere in Europe they're very, very rare. So we've got some incredible creatures. Even more rare are the sea fans, sort of lodgers, if you like. So growing on the sea fan, we've got the sea fan anemone up there in the top corner, and the sea fan sea slug, which just looks just like the sea fan itself. So you have to look really closely, but yeah, we've got some very rare things in our waters. Not to mention our megafauna, so basking sharks. We've also got leatherback turtles coming into our water every year to feed. I gave this talk last week to some students at Newquay College who weren't actually studying the marine subject, and none of them realised we've got these incredible creatures in our waters. But that is the case for most of the public. They don't appreciate that these live here. And dolphins and cetaceans in general, we get lots of different species showing up around Cornwall's waters. We've had quite large numbers of reports of Risso's dolphins, which are really beautiful. I saw some this summer myself. We even had sightings of orcas coming into the Wildlife Trusts in our waters. So I don't know if any of you have ever seen one of those. I'd love to see one, but they did come into our water. And much easier to spot, but we do have Atlantic grey seals. And interestingly, we have over a third of the world's grey seals in UK waters. So people kind of take seals a little bit for granted, but they are very, very special. We need to look after them. There's actually more African elephants in the world than there are seals. Everyone knows African elephants are rare. But these guys are really pretty threatened. So there you go. We've got amazing wildlife, but sadly, you guys know this already, sadly there are lots of threats as well facing our wildlife, and this is why our work is so important. We've got massive issues globally with plastic pollution. It's something that is just really escalating, and plastics causing so many problems in our food chains. You know, plastics, like plastic bottles, they don't break down very quickly at all. I mean, they will biodegrade, but it takes about 4,000 years, I think, for one plastic bottle to get broken up. And the amount that we produce is shocking, and a lot of it ends up in the sea. We also have issues with accidental bycatch of marine animals, getting caught in fishing gear, which is very sad. It does happen. We have issues with pollution, such as oil spills, sewage pollution, and obviously we have issues as well with some types of fishing and dredging as well. So quite a hot topic at the moment in Falmouth. There's plans to dredge a vast area of Falmouth over the mill beds. So that's what already explained, is very rare and important. So dredging. Oh, and wind farms as well. There's a lot of plans for wind farms all around the UK. And there's very little protection for marine life. So we're trying to address that, and we're doing it in lots of different ways. So we've got loads of projects running at Cornwall Wildlife Trust. Nearly all of these projects are all things that can't operate without volunteers. As I've already said, there's only 2.5 of us at Cornwall Wildlife Trust working, and you're going to see on lots of projects. So all of these projects need volunteers. I'm going to tell you a bit about each of them now. So the first one to tell you about is the Yorkshire project. This is a project that ran for 3 years, and during those 3 years we worked all around Cornwall at all 5 of the voluntary marine conservation areas. Now within each of those areas we try to help local people who care for the marine environment to get together and get skilled up and get out talking to the public about why people should care about the marine environment. So basically doing our job for us. And it worked really well. We spent 3 years, we trained up loads of volunteers, we helped them get organised, and now each of those 5 areas we've got an active group of volunteers who are doing all sorts of activities, from beach clean-ups to rock pooling sessions for families, the surveys from the cliffs and from the shore, on the shore, sorry, and you know, running talks, things like that, really raising the profile of the local marine environment, which has been really successful. And since that project ended in 2012, or 2013, the word has sort of continued to spread, and it's kind of inspired other people to do similar things. So independently of the Wildlife Trust, 3 more groups have formed, and we're supporting those groups as well. So we've got, in the east of Cornwall, we've got Rain Peninsula Beach Care, and the group that's been set up there, they're really good at raising people's awareness of marine pollution and plastics in particular. Over at Par, we've got the Friends of Par Beach, who are doing a great job of looking after their little patch and telling people about that. And over at Newquay, we've got the Newquay Marine Group, who are doing a fantastic job there as well. And the marine life around Newquay is incredible. People just think of Newquay as a place to go surfing, you know, to have a few beers, but actually it's got amazing marine life. So that's great. You know, we've now got 8 groups of volunteers in Cornwall, and you know, the numbers of people actually hearing about marine issues and learning about the marine environment is really, really expanding. We've it's kind of we're hoping we've got some plans to be doing a lot more of this sort of work. So watch this space. In the next few years, there could be even more of these marine groups being formed, and we've got a real ambition to set up a marine group in North Cornwall, Slater Bay, Mounts Bay, and Falmouth as well, because there's so many people who are passionate about marine life in Falmouth, and at the moment there isn't a volunteer group. So who knows, if that happens, in particularly the Falmouth one, you guys might be able to get involved and become volunteers. It would be great. So there you go. So you can see here we've got now a large number of people out there doing our work for us, speaking to the public, really, you know, bringing in really useful information, and running lots of events, which is great. Okay, so another project that the Wildlife Trust runs is the Shore Search Project. Sorry, Sea Search Project. Sea Search is our diving surveying project. Now, Sea Search is actually a national initiative run by the Marine Conservation Society, but locally Cornwall Wildlife Trust runs the Cornwall branch of Sea Search. And I'm very lucky because last year I got joined running the Sea Search diving programme. We only ran quite a small number of dives last year because we didn't have a lot of funding for it, but we're hoping to expand it in future years. So have we got any divers here? Got a few divers? Great. Well, you guys might want to get involved in this.
There will be more divers as the year goes on.
Yeah, I mean, diving in Cornwall is fantastic. Obviously, it's different to diving in the tropics. It can be more dangerous, you know, the conditions can be far harsher. You know, obviously, the temperature is one, but tides and waves and things like that will play a part. So we have to be quite careful, which means that our shore search dives are only open to people with quite good high level of experience for safety reasons. So you need to be a PADI rescue diver or a BZAC sport diver as a minimum requirement, and you need to have at least 30 dives in the UK logged. You need to have all your equipment and insurance. But as long as you satisfy all those requirements, then you can come along on one of our training courses. So we run weekend training courses. They don't cost much, normally about £40. And at the end of that, you're a Sea Search observer. So what happens is every dive you do, you can fill in a form and record what you found. And that information is so useful. It's really surprising. I mean, it actually costs a lot of money to organise proper scientific dive surveys. But if we can tap into people who are passionate hobby divers and get them just writing down what they find. You know, even when they begin, they might not be as expert as some, but that doesn't matter. Any information is better than what we currently have, which is very little. And people get really into it. So, and the Sea Search programme at the Wildlife Trust, obviously coordinated by us. And what it means is that we set up quite a few organised dives, and you can meet other like-minded people who are interested in marine life, and that's great because quite often it is you feel a bit isolated if you're into marine life. If you join an average dive club, you often find that a lot of the other members of the dive club aren't necessarily as into it as you are. They might be more into breaking bits off wrecks, for example. So it's quite nice getting together with other people who are really into marine life and underwater photos. You know, so obviously nowadays, people have got cameras, so it's made it a lot easier to record what you're photographing. And I'd much rather take photos of marine life than take it home and eat it. I think it's a lot more of a challenge. That's that. So that's a great project. Oh, another thing I should mention as well is that last year, for the first time in Cornwall, we actually organised a Sea Search course for snorkelers. And what that meant was that it's a lot more easy to find people who meet the requirements. As long as you're an experienced snorkeler, you actually have to have a qualification to take part. You could then come along and we train them to fill in Sea Search forms. So hopefully, watch this space. You might find that there are some courses that you guys might want to take part in. We also do quite a lot of surveying there on the shore, so the intertidal, and a really groundbreaking project run by Cornwall Wildlife Trust Record Centre was the Intertidal Discovery Project. This is a 2-year project which was carried out and it finished in 2014. And during a 2-year period, using really high-tech handheld GPS systems, the small team plus some volunteers managed to map the whole of Cornwall's north coast. So they went along the intertidal and they literally wrote down where every separate biotope can be found. So biotopes are assemblages of species. It was a really groundbreaking project. They covered a huge area, and all of the data from that is available to you guys to use. So if you're ever going to go out and do a survey on the north coast, you could actually look at this website, and there you can see a snapshot of how it was back then when they did the survey, and you could maybe replicate it and see if things have changed. So it's a really amazing resource, and we really hope that we can find funding to carry on this project and do the whole of the south coast as well, and currently looking for funding to do that. Another shore project is Shore Search, and Shore Search is something that I've been running now for 3 years, and this is a volunteer project where we take volunteers out and record what we find on the shore. Now for this you don't have to have any sort of qualifications in the subject, you don't have to go on a training course to do it, you can just turn up, and you just have to be enthusiastic and willing to learn. And it's great fun. So we go out on the shore, when you're with a team of volunteers, it's amazing, and if you choose a good location and a good low tide, it's amazing what you can find. And this has been really, really useful, particularly in the marine conservation zone process. So whilst our government was looking at setting up marine conservation zones, we were able to go out with volunteers and look for rare species within these areas to really highlight why we need these zones setting up. And here's a few highlights from the Sea Search, Shore Search, too many searches, Shore Search project. These are some of the species that we found around the coast. Really amazing, colourful, interesting animals and plants, you know, are everywhere. Our shores are really teeming with life. And you guys can get involved with that very easily. So once you've been on one of these Shore Search surveys, you'll be able to see it's not all that complex what we do, but the information we're getting is really useful. And all the materials you need are online, so you know, who knows, you guys might want to, you know, as part of your volunteer hours, you might want to go out and run some of your own surveys, and you can class that potentially as volunteer hours by going out doing your own surveys and then sending the information into us at the Wildlife Trust. A good example of how Shore Search has really helped is over at Newquay. The government had Newquay set up as a recommended marine conservation zone, and I'd heard rumours that there was some pretty cool wildlife down on the shore, but Fistral Beach is not really known for rock crawling, it's more known for surfing, isn't it? But we managed to get some really good days where there was good low tides and not much surf, and we went down and recorded in the rock pools, and we found loads of cool stuff. So we found giant gobies. These are big gobies that live in high shore pools. They're a protected species, and we proved that they live there at Newquay, which is really, really significant for the MCZ process. We even found corals. So this was in a small cave, tucked away from the oncoming waves. So it's facing back up the shore, on a reef on the low shore. And we called it the Cave of Dreams, because in there we found so much cool stuff, including these beautiful little tiny cup corals, which are about the size of a Smartie, bright orange. You know, not at all what you'd expect to find on Cornish shores. And we found rare stalked jellyfish as well. These are protected species. So all of these records have really helped us argue the case that that area should become a marine conservation zone. And we're hoping to hear any day now the government's decision on that tranche of MCZs, and hopefully we can get that one plus more. And the other thing we do with Shore Search as well is we run public rock pooling days. So quite often there'll be a public event where myself or one of my colleagues will be talking to kids and families and getting them really excited and engaged in marine life and getting them looking in the rock pool. But at the same time, there'll be a team of volunteers actually accurately recording everything they find. So we often have events like that. In fact, next week in half term, we've got 2 days of shore searching. We're going to be down at Godrevy. One day, I think it's the Wednesday, and then on Friday we're going to be down at Swamppool. And you guys will be welcome to come along if you want to take part in those. All of the information from Shore Search I put up onto a blog, and to be honest, it's mainly cool pictures of interesting things we found. And I've been doing that now for about 3 years, so there's a lot of information on there, and you can learn a lot. And please check it out. Okay, so then another project to the Wildlife Trust, a little bit more of a serious or sombre project, is recording what washes up dead on our shores. Now, before this project was set up, if something washed up dead, it would get removed and no one would record that information at all. So this has actually been really, really important. And we've now got teams of volunteers all around Cornwall who we call up and they'll go out and record what they find. So if anyone ever finds something washed up dead or alive, all the phone numbers you need are on here. And our volunteers man a 24-hour hotline. So you'll get through to a volunteer who's giving up their time. That volunteer will then try and has got a list of phone numbers of people who have been trained to go out and record what's found, and they'll try and find someone and send them out to record what they find, and then tag it so we know that it's been recorded, and then the animal will be removed, usually by the beach owner or the council. But from that, and from all the photos and all the studies they've done, we've learnt a lot about what's threatening large marine animals in our waters. So it's been really, really important research, and that's another one that you guys could get involved in if you want to. It's a bit of a depressing and not very nice job to have to do, but incredibly useful. Okay, and another project, the Wildlife Trust, is our coastal Cornwall Marine and Coastal Group, and this is a group that are working to try and stop marine animals being harassed out in the wild. Now, obviously, more and more people these days are using the waters around Cornwall. There's a lot more people able to afford sports like kayaking and paddle boarding, and getting into these little coves is a lot easier nowadays. Also, you've got people with enough money. They don't necessarily have to have any experience. They can buy speedboats, and we know that sometimes this can lead to real problems with wildlife being harassed. And there's a photo taken 2 summers ago down at Padstow, when some dolphins came into the Canal Estuary, and these were bottlenose dolphins. They were busy feeding, but people obviously got really excited to see dolphins, and that's human nature, isn't it? You get really excited if you see something so as amazing as a dolphin. You'd want to get closer to it. But we just ask people to treat these animals with respect, and if they are, if they're doing their natural behaviour, just observe it from a safe distance. In this case, though, people got carried away and they ended up circling this group and getting really close, as you can see from the picture. And the boat in the centre there at the top was travelling really fast. He must have been, because he's towing the wakeboarder. Yeah, and that is really unfair. And what was really sad was that people witnessed several boats going right through this pod of dolphins, and an hour or so later a dead dolphin was found with a propeller injury. Now, luckily the police take this sort of thing really seriously, partly because of our work with the Marine Coastal Code Group. They are on alert to sort of take action if this sort of thing happens. So we have also got a 24-hour hotline that you can call to report marine disturbances, and both the numbers are on this card. In fact, it's the same number for both things. They're both stranded animals under disturbances. The two boat owners were eventually prosecuted. So that sends a good warning to boat owners. But sadly, like I said, you don't have to have a driving licence to own a speedboat. So it's very hard for us to get these messages over to people, but we're trying our best, and now you can do something about it if you see it happening. By the way, if you're ever out on a speedboat or any kind of boat and you're going along in a straight line and a dolphin suddenly appears, or maybe a group of dolphins appears, and they start surfing your bow wake, that's fine. That's not harassing the dolphin, is it? It's the dolphin's choice. Dolphins come and join you, and they may want to swim with you for a while. That's fine. But what you shouldn't do is, if you see a load of dolphins, you shouldn't head over to them at full speed, should you? You can head over towards them at a respectable speed. Don't get any closer than 100 metres of them though. Ideally turn your engine off. Definitely put it in neutral. Sadly, there have been quite a few reports of people harassing wildlife around our coasts. So yeah, keep a lookout for them. But it doesn't mean you can't have amazing wildlife experiences. A good example is basking sharks. Basking sharks, when they come into our waters, they're very busy. They've got to feed. They've only got a limited window of time. They've got to eat as much plankton as they can, and they're in the shallows with their mouths open, constantly feeding, aren't they, whilst they're here? Well, if you go up too close to the basking shark, you're going to upset it. It will swim down. It will stop feeding for a while, and that is classed as harassment. So far better than getting too close to it is to just look at the direction it's travelling and put yourself in line, because they tend to go in straight lines, as they're swimming along. So go 100 metres or so away in front of this basking shark, and then turn off your engine and just wait. You can even put snorkelers in the water as long as they wait next to the boat and don't bomb towards the shark. That's fine. But what will normally happen is the shark will just keep going, and you get an amazing wildlife experience without actually disturbing the animal as it swims past you. And we have to be aware that we can watch wildlife from boats, but we've got to do it sensibly. So that's the Marine Coastal Code Group. We're also working a lot with coast steering companies and kayak hire companies, and just trying to get people more aware that you can, unwittingly quite often disturb wildlife. Birds nesting in cliffs, for example. It's quite easy to disturb them. During their breeding season, we need to really be letting them, leaving them alone. And then we've got another project. So this is the project that I've been working on as well, quite intensely in the last couple of years. And what we've done is we've set up a project called the Cornwall Good Seafood Guide. Now, a lot of you guys will have had lectures about fishing and how fishing can have really bad impacts on the environment and on fish stocks. And certainly globally, humans and fishing have caused a lot of issues. But Cornwall is a fishing area, and fishing is really important to our culture and our economy. And people who live in Cornwall, should be given the information so that they can make really good choices when they're choosing seafood, so that they can continue to support the fishing industry, but choose seafood that is collected in the best possible way. Now, a lot of our members have been asking us for this sort of info for years, but we decided, we want to be working with the industry better, and this is a great way of doing it. So what we've done is we've looked at the whole of Cornwall's fishing industry, and we've created a web resource that anyone can access on smartphones or desktops or laptop computers. And it looks at over 50 species of fish that are landed in Cornwall, and over 13 fishing methods. And for each species and fishing method, it says how it scores them, and makes recommendations on what's sustainable. Now, some of you guys, I don't know if any of you guys eat seafood regularly. Some of you may have chosen not to, just your own choice. But what we've realised as an organisation is that the fishing industry, we have to work with the industry. Although some people think of it as a potential threat to marine life, actually, the fishing industry has changed a lot, and the guys who are still in business, in the last 20 years, it's changed massively. The guys who are still in business are the guys who are really thinking about their future, and we want people to recognise that actually conservationists and fishermen have got a lot in common. They both need a healthy sea, otherwise they're not going to, fishing can't happen, can it? If you have an unhealthy, barren sea, fishing's not going to happen. So what we want to do is work on what we've got in common, and we want people making good choices when choosing seafood. So if any of you guys want to visit that site, it's a really useful resource. You can learn a lot about our industry, and please tell people about it as well. And even if you don't eat seafood yourselves, make your friends aware of this project. It's going to be really, really useful. Okay, and then the last project to tell you about is our Sequest project. So this has been running as well now for about 10 years, this one. And we have groups of volunteers who get together regularly, and they meet on cliffs, usually, and headlands, and they just watch for marine life. This is one of the most chilled out ways of doing marine surveys. And it's not for everyone. Some people find it a bit boring, but when you get to see something, some wildlife from the cliffs, it's really rewarding. What we're doing is we're using binoculars and telescopes, and we train volunteers up, and the data we're collecting is really, really useful. It's all effort-based data. So what that means is we're not just sort of recording everything we see and writing a list, we're also recording how long we've been looking, so that you can then do comparisons later, in a few years' time, to see if these species have become more or less rare. And you can find out a lot more details about that on our website. And we've been getting some great records. People have been seeing things like minke whales, obviously dolphins, seals, basking sharks, all kinds of animals being spotted off our coast. So how can you get involved? Well, all of those projects that I've just been talking about rely on volunteers. And if one of those is particularly of interest to you, please get in touch with the Wildlife Trust. You can find loads more information about all those projects on our website. And what it pays to do is, rather than contacting us by emailing a general address, it pays for you to spend a little bit of time reading about it, and then contacting through each separate web page the person who runs that project. And I'm sure you guys will get a lot out of volunteering for the Wildlife Trust. I mean, we're actually really keen to work with young people a lot better. I mean, in the past we've found that a lot of our volunteers have been sort of retired people. I mean, we also have a lot of families come to our events, and young kids and stuff like that. We've got lots of children, members of our Fox Club, which is really cool. But actually then you find there's a gap, you know, teenagers to young adults. That's an area of people that we quite often don't do very well at engaging with. But actually I think they're probably the most important group of people to really talk to, because all of you guys, you know, have got years and years ahead of you. Obviously, you know, and we need to get the next generation helping us and getting involved in these sort of projects, because they are going to be so important locally for our marine life. So yeah, so if any of you would like to get involved, please get in touch. Also look out for this Falmouth Marine Group, which I'm really hoping will come off the ground over the next sort of coming few years. And there you go, thank you very much for listening.